Hello everyone and welcome to QualityOldGames. Today we are having another battle report from multiplayer battles, and the first one is 2 versus 2, namely barbarians versus civilized Greeks and those living around the Greeks. So, first we have the Germanian army, that was under my command. Then we have the Scythian army, commanded by HMS Artibella. And then we have, well, I will return to those a bit later. So, about my troops. I focused mostly on Gothic cavalry, with quite heavy upgrades. Then chosen archer warbands with some upgrades. And then some knight riders and axemen and spear warbands to kind of allow the archers to fall back if they get rushed. And my ally here has quite a few headhunting maidens cavalry, also Scythian horse archers, which are of course great, and then archer warbands, chosen archer warbands, and some peasants, which I think was rather interesting choice. Then on the opposite side we have Greek cities commanded by Necromancer from Enroth. He has archers in the front, basic archers, then some Grecian archers in the back, and in between there are some armored hoplites, then some elite Spartan hoplites behind, and then some Greek cavalry and some militia cavalry as well. And the Macedonians are commanded by Spider of Le Despacito. I will pause for a while so that I can present his troops. So there are archers on the front, 4 units, then 2 units of Grecian archers, quite a few units of royal pikemen, and as support it seems 5 units of companion cavalry. So already the skirmish is beginning, and here at least my archers are using their superior range as the Greek army is on the move. It seems the armored hoplites are moving to rush, and here also Artibella is moving against Macedon, and it seems the peasants here act as some kind of meat shield. And also the horse archers are on the move. So it's going to be skirmish first, and it seems some militia cavalries are moving toward the units, and here I have skirmish mode on, which of course disrupts the formation here. So I opted to take it off for a while, and since the chosen archers are quite good in melee, especially against light units, they are able to hold their own against, for example, militia cavalry. Then the Gothic cavalries charge the Greek archers, and there the peasants are also charging the Macedonian normal archers. And here, at least initially, those basic archers, some of them are broken, and Grecian archers are driven off. And then there is a cavalry battle, and it seems Greek cities are reinforcing their position with hoplites and additional cavalry, which means that the Gothic cavalries are forced to pull back. And here the peasants are actually working surprisingly well against the normal archers. So at least some of them have been driven off, and here the Scythian horse archers are inflicting some damage to the companion cavalry. But now the peasants are driven off. The cavalry battle continues on this side as well as the archer skirmish. So the Gothic cavalries have taken quite a beating already, and they are being chased by especially enemy hoplites or Greek hoplites, and of course by the cavalry. So I'm pulling 2 additional units of Gothic cavalry to help to defend this flank, and that means that the Greek cities need to pull back. And as you can see, at least the short-range Greek archers have been decimated there, and that's pretty much the case for the Macedonian normal archers as well, because those chosen archer warbands have better range, better morale, better protection, and so on. So they have been able to perform quite well there. And it seems the Greek infantry is advancing, and it seems these units do have the skirmish mode still on, and the Scythians are advancing, especially their cavalry is advancing there, but at the same time the Greek infantry is moving to engage, and these spear warbands in loose formation, I doubt they are going to make it. And additionally, these units don't have the skirmish mode on, so they will be kind of chased out, which is a bit of a blunder from my side. But let's check what's happening here. So the cavalry is maneuvering and the missile exchange is continuing, and now Scythians are engaging the Grecian archers as well. However, the actual melee is going on here, and as you can see, the Greeks are doing fairly well. On the other hand, their rear was a bit undefended, and thus the company, or rather Gothic cavalry, was able to drive most of their archers off, and it seems the Greek cavalry is also in a bit of a trouble, as Scythian cavalry is coming to help there. So basically it's concentrated Greek phalanxes versus loose Germanian phalanxes, supported by some archers. And of course the infantry here is fighting, but I guess those Spartan hoplites will make short work of these troops, and indeed they are breaking. So, thus far the Macedon is still holding back their main force. It seems the missile exchange is continuing, and now the Greeks are in the middle of the fight, still continuing the battle here. But the Gothic cavalries and the Scythian headhunting maidens have been able to deal with most of the Greek cavalry and missile units. So basically Greek cities still have the infantry, and now it seems we are having something happening in this leftmost flank as well from our side's perspective. So companion cavalries are being beaten. The phalanxes are pulled to the fight, and actually it seems I missed the part where the companion cavalries were actually slaughtered. Perhaps it happened somewhere around here. So, the Macedonian phalanxes are advancing, and the Greek phalanxes are quite a bit in depth here. So, the archers are still firing on this side, and it seems they are already beginning to target those royal pikemen. 6 units of royal pikemen are not to be trifled with. Greek cities are concentrating their forces here, mainly armored hoplites and some Spartan hoplites as well, and it seems the Germanian infantry is pretty much on the run. However, there is still some cavalry remaining, especially for the Scythians, and they do have quite a few archers as well to deal some damage there. The problem with the Greeks and the Macedonians as well is that their formations are a bit spread out, especially as they don't have cavalry anymore. So it might be the case that at least some of the units will be picked apart one by one. As for example here, those Grecian archers were hit by cavalry and they were routed, and then these royal pikemen are being targeted as well. And the Greek infantry is chasing some individual units, but it seems that the formation of the Macedonians and the Greeks is spreading even further. And here at least the Scythians are actually keeping their army together quite well. The same cannot be said about the Germania here. So, here you can see, if an individual unit gets targeted by numerous cavalry units that charge simultaneously, the result is quite soon a breaking. Here, once again, is an individual royal pikeman unit, and they got broken quite easily. So, the Macedonians still have a clump of royal pikemen here, and the Greek cities have some armored hoplites running there, some Spartan hoplites, more armored hoplites, more Spartan hoplites, and that's it. And here, as these units are forming or are in some kind of formation, they are a bit more difficult to deal with. And apparently there is some archers at the Scythians and Germanians back, so they may be able to inflict some casualties from that direction. So now we are having Greek units attacked that are kind of separated from the rest of the army, and they are actually even hit by archers before the actual cavalry charge. And we have some small skirmishes going on in here, and the archers are supporting the battle. They are hitting the Spartan hoplites from the back, and actually this spear war band was able to hold out quite well, but it seems it will be decimated quite soon, yeah. So, still some Spartans left, and there is actually a Grecian archer unit running, but it will be most likely chased down by the headhunting maidens. And Spartan hoplites are chasing Chosen Archer warband. I'm not certain to which side that's better. And it seems the Greek general is broken, and his bodyguard. And of course that wreaks havoc to the Greek infantry. So there is one unit of Chosen Archer warbands is tying up one unit of Spartan hoplites. And the Macedonian phalanxes are forming up in here, and they are being supported by some Grecian archers. However, it remains to be seen how well the phalanxes will last against the army that they are about to face. So the peasants are forming up for an attack, as well as the archers, and the cavalry is moving into a position to attack from behind. It seems the Macedonian phalanxes are forming a box here. However, it might be not the best option here, because Scythians still have some cavalry units available, and thus they can hit the backs here of the box, if a box indeed is formed. And the merry chase is still going on in there, and apparently the box formation was abandoned, and the peasants are too scared to face the oncoming royal pikemen. So this formation here still has something going for it. Some scraps left from the Germanian infantry are moving in to aid in the, perhaps we can call it a final battle in here. And here you can see the archers are beginning to fire, and if they can hit the backs of the units, the casualties will be quite significant. Pikemen are trying to run, but they are taking rather heavy casualties, and now the Macedonian force is kind of splitting up in here. So, as you can see, the cavalry is moving in to engage the individual units. Here, for example, and that unit breaks. And now the Germanian cavalry is moving in. Apparently not quite as efficient as the Scythian cavalry in last case, so Germanian cavalry is actually being driven off. Perhaps I don't want to admit that I'm commanding the Germanians in this case. Well, anyway, let's see if the Scythians can perform a bit better. Kind of holding off. There are these phalanxes engaging the royal, or rather the chosen archers. And now the infantry is moving to act as an anvil, while the cavalry makes the hammer blows to the enemy units. So, two phalanxes left in this side, and perhaps, yeah, there is still that chase going on. And once again it seems that the Germanian cavalry is not fit to the task of finishing the enemies off. And here the archers are getting some free shots into the Macedonian backs. And I think this is rather the end of the end instead of beginning of the end. So these guys are wavering, these guys are still steady. And then there is the final unit of Spartan hoplites.
Any of our warriors would die rather than run.
And this unit is putting up quite a decent fight. However, it's being surrounded, wavering, and I think it will break momentarily. Actually, it did quite well.
Enemy warlord lies dead. Now he can drink with his ancestors and watch his warriors flee.
So, perhaps they are the heroes of the battle, even though they eventually broke. Still fighting to the death. Yeah. They put up quite a fight, and I think one of the players admitted defeat, because perhaps the result was inevitable there. So, it seems HMS Artibella got quite a nice amount of kills, and here, as well as the Necromancer from Enroth, and me and Spider got a bit less. And let's see about the Germanian unit. So our MVPs were clearly the Gothic cavalries and the warlords. Perhaps these chosen archer warbands were a bit of a disappointment, and of course the infantry was never meant to inflict too many casualties. So, let's move to the second battle. So, in the second battle we have Macedon, on this side commanded by Trooper. Apparently he got promoted to general. Quite a few royal pikemen, supported by Grecian archers and a bit of cavalry. And our plan on this side was to concentrate our forces in this area into a defensive position. So in the middle are troops commanded by me, Armenian troops, quite a few archers with some support from heavy spearmen, but the main focus are the cataphracts and cataphract archers. So 2 cataphract archers and 6 units of cataphracts, the maximum amount of cavalry that's allowed by the rules in these battles. And then we have Pontus here commanded by HMS Artibella, archer line in the front, some bronze shields behind, some additional archers and bronze shields, some Cappadocian cavalry, and then these chariot archers and Scythid chariots, kind of murderers against enemy cavalry. And then there is that Pontic light cavalry. We are facing Seleucids, commanded by necromancer from Enroth, and it seems Egypt is advancing, but let's check the troops first before the battle can really begin. So once again, these Scythid chariots, some cataphracts supported by silver-shield pikemen, and a bunch of archers. And then the Egyptian force consists of Pharaoh's guards, some bowmen, some Pharaoh's bowmen. Actually, in addition to the Grecian archers, they are the only long-range missile unit in this battle. And then there is the Egyptian cavalry, so desert cavalry, quite a few of them, and then Egyptian chariot archers and additionally some Egyptian chariots. So quite heavy emphasis on chariots on this side. Of course, they are really good against cavalry. And then we have a Parthian army commanded by Veneziano, 33, and there are, surprise, surprise, quite heavy amount of cavalry, namely cataphract camels, horse archers, and actually are there any cataphracts? So perhaps basically cataphract camels. And then there are the archers, so no infantry and so on. And let's get back to the battle. So the cataphract archers are beginning to skirmish, and here at least the Egyptians are advancing, but apparently the battle is not commencing there just yet, not even the skirmish. But here the Parthians are moving horse archers to engage those cataphracts, and here Seleucids are moving forward. At least the archers are moving into position to engage the missile units. Let's see, perhaps this view here is a bit better. So the cataphract archers are pulling back there, driven off by the Parthian horse archers. And here the Pontic chariot archers are perhaps baiting a bit the Seleucids if they would be willing to engage. And it seems this side as well is concentrating their forces in the middle. So as you can see, there are quite solid pike phalanxes there, and of course the right flank is guarded by these bronze shield pikemen. Rather, only bronze shields. Yeah, bronze shields. And here the Egyptians are sending their cavalry to fight, or perhaps driving those cataphract archers off. And here the skirmish seems to be beginning in earnest, so unfortunately the Egyptians chased the cataphract archers a bit too far and became vulnerable to missile fire from the archers, and they are suffering quite heavy casualties, especially that one cavalry unit there. And also it seems, or seemed like that here the skirmish between archers is already beginning, but that wasn't the case. Here Parthian archers are moving to engage Armenian archers, but they are being overwhelmed, at least initially. There is a bit of a skirmish going on the other side as well. Seleucid archers versus Pontic chariot archers, and it seems the Parthian archers need to pull back. And one of their units took quite a heavy beating. And Seleucids are sending their cataphracts to this flank as well. He has to reinforce it, and the Parthians are moving to that flank as well. And here on the other side, Pontus is making a move for a skirmish. So it seems there is chariot archers acted as a diversion, so that the archers could be moved into engage and missile superiority gained in this flank. But the pace of the battle still is quite slow. Here Egyptians are moving forward, perhaps to initiate an engagement. Here also Seleucid archers and Armenian archers, so it seems both sides are getting a bit impatient, and the battle is about to begin in earnest. Also Egyptian chariots are moving to engage, and here perhaps the Egyptians have the missile superiority, and once again the chariot archers are advancing on the left flank from this side. And here the chariot archers, or Egyptian chariot archers, are actually losing the skirmish as well as the Seleucid archers. And now something is happening on the other flank. Here the Parthian archers are moving to engage, and Pontic bronze shields are advancing, and it seems Seleucid Scythian chariots are being targeted by fire arrows. Parthia is advancing. The archers are moving into engage, and now Seleucid cataphracts are making their move against phalanx in loose formation, but it seems that the impact of the cataphracts is actually quite great, and a phalanx in loose formation is unable to stop them. So they really haven't taken that many casualties, and this bronze shield unit is actually breaking. So that cataphract charge was quite efficient, and now it seems they have baited the Cappadocian cavalry to charge, and then the trap is sprung as the chariots rush in, and the Cappadocian cavalries are clearly in trouble. So these Scythian chariots clearly are worth their weight in gold. And still the skirmish is going on. Some more bronze shields are being brought to the front, and the Pontic light, or rather chariot archers, were broken as well. Pontus is getting some reinforcements from Armenia. However, now these chariots are running amok, and these bronze shields are a bit unsure what to do, and they are being charged by the cataphracts once again. And on the other flank, it seems there is quite heavy skirmish going on. Cataphracts' camels are also advancing, and it seems this bronze shield unit is able to hold its own against the cataphracts, especially as it's being reinforced by another unit here as well. So let's switch to the left flank, even though the Pharaoh's guards are beginning to advance. So we have some chariot archers here doing the Cantabrian circle, and then these cataphract camels are advancing quite heavily. And they are able to push through some of the archers. The Grecian archers need to pull back. And let's see, apparently the pike line here in loose formation is not able to hold them. So, chariots or cataphracts are moving into charge, as well as the royal pikemen phalanxes, and these pikemen should be able to wipe these cavalry units off easy peasy. However, these cataphracts kind of got circled around here, and once again I'm a bit ashamed to say that perhaps I, as the commander, was not up to the task. So, the cataphract camels are actually doing some quite devastating moves here, and the front here is kind of wavering, excluding these royal pikemen. So, the Armenian infantry is kind of beaten back. However, now we have chariots as reinforcements, and it seems they are able to sky through both of the Egyptian and the Parthian cavalry here. And they are being helped by the Armenian cataphracts. And on the other flank, it seems the situation is remaining as it is. The Egyptian phalanxes are holding their position. And here this unit of Scythian chariots was broken. They are running amok, but so are most of the cataphract camels as well. And once again, the Seleucid cataphracts are on the move. They are targeting something. And now the Egyptians are on the move as well. So there is quite a lot of happening at the same time in quite a few fronts. So the Pharaoh's guards are here in position, and they are advancing towards, and here it seems some Armenian cataphracts are caught out in the open by Seleucid cataphracts. And okay, but it's the Seleucids that break, at least for now, and the Egyptians are charging. Against loose Armenian phalanx. Fortunately for Armenia, those spearmen are not in the phalanx there. The weakness with Pharaoh's guards is that they are vulnerable to missile fire, and now these guys are in phalanx and they are able to easily push through the Armenian phalanx here. On the other side, the Macedonian phalanxes are advancing clearly, and they are facing little resistance, so perhaps the main battle at the moment will be fought on this right flank here, where the Egyptians are facing the Pontus, basically. And also the Pharaoh's bowmen are moving in to engage, but they are running into Pontus phalanx, and that might be a bit difficult for them. Some fire arrows are being shot in order to break the units. Armenian cataphracts, or perhaps all remaining Armenian cavalry, is moving in to engage, while the Macedonian phalanxes are moving to guard the rear, but it seems these Pontic chariots are being broken, and it might actually be that the Armenian cavalry is actually YOLO charging these camel cataphracts, and they are being charged in the rear with Seleucid cataphracts. Armenian general fell, And this cavalry charge turned out to be an absolute disaster. So, no, nothing more about that. And here we still have the Egyptian forces. They are trying to flank the central position here. However, the Macedonians are moving in to intercept them. The Armenian army seems to be fleeing pretty much all of the army. Seleucids army seems to be fleeing at least mostly. So basically it's Parthia and Egypt versus Macedon and a bit of Pontus. Well, there is this one cataphract archer unit. Well, perhaps some scraps of Armenia as well is joining in here to help. And we do have, or rather, there is some Cappadocian cavalry still in fight. And there are some Pontic light cavalry hunting for fleeing enemies and making sure that they are not going to join the battle again.
Enemy cowards, run!
And it seems Seleucids have been driven off. And now the Egyptian phalanxes are clearly in trouble as they are outnumbered quite heavily by the Macedonians. Parthia is still holding back a bit. Perhaps their archers will do some tricks soon. Egyptians are starting to break.
Enemy general shows his...
And as the Egyptian general falls, it seems that their fight is about to come to an end. So, still some Parthian forces remaining, and they have to face the might of Macedonian phalanxes that are still fresh and in really good shape. So taking them on will be quite difficult. Still some skirmishing going on this side. Parthian archers facing Armenian and Pontic archers, but now the infantry is returning to this area. And let's see what will happen here. And there is a bit of Pontus cavalry circling around. So that might be some trouble for the Parthians as well. Let's speed up things a bit. Okay, some cataphract camels are trying to chase cataphract archers, and as they are quite fresh, they were able to catch up with these guys and drive them off. The cataphract archers are fleeing towards the safety of phalanxes. And still some arrows flying. And it seems the Pontus is making their move against the archers, but these cataphract camels are able to keep them off. And now the cataphract archers are pursuing, but they are being shot down or driven off by missile fire. And it means that it's basically up to the Macedonians to win the battle here. Actually, the cataphract camels have been drawn out by Pontic light cavalry, which of course makes the enemy cavalry or rather enemy archers quite vulnerable to these cavalry charges from here. And it seems that the archers are about to break. Some of the camels are rushing back to help, but the tide of Macedonian pikes is just too great to be halted by some archers and a couple of cavalry camels. So it seems this battle is about to be done. There is still a heroic charge by the cataphract camels, and perhaps we could call it a shining charge, as they are gaining more and more experience, and they are having a field day here among Macedonian archers. Still a bit of a cavalry battle here. It's okay. So those cataphract camels are broken, and the amount of Parthian archers still active is being diminished drastically, and these bodyguards are being overwhelmed by the royal pikemen, and those spears will most likely make short work of these cavalry units here. And only a couple of missile units still left, so perhaps we can speed up things a bit. And the battle is finished here. So, the casualties inflicted were quite even actually, with HMS Artibella doing quite a few casualties, and here Veneziano actually inflicting most of the casualties for the other side. I'm not certain, did it come from those cataphract camels mostly, or from what? But and on this side, the trooper clearly having his army quite intact still, so perhaps he would be ready for another battle after this one. And here a bit more detailed analysis of Armenian troops. So the archers actually performed quite well, some of the cataphract units too, but perhaps some of the cataphracts suffered from poor leadership, and once again the infantry didn't do that much there. So that was battle 2, and then let's move to battle 3 next. Okay, and it's time for the last battle. So on this side we have the Greek cities, Britons and Scipii fighting against, it seems, Julii, Numidia and Carthage. So a bit of a Roman civil war going on there. So there is a line of legionary first cohorts for blue, some Roman archers, some archer auxiliars, war dogs, and then some Praetorian cavalry. And I will pause the battle for a bit so I can go through the rest of the troops. So the Greek cities have armored hoplites, and quite a few of them, surprise, surprise, and then a bit of missile cavalry and Cretan archers. So Greek cities clearly are relying on their phalanxes to hold the line, while the archers do the killing, at least initially. Then we have Britons here, some barbarian cavalry mercenaries actually. That's interesting. And then we have British chariots, 2 units of them, chosen swordsmen, slingers, and some more chosen swords and swordsmen, and some more slingers. I don't actually know how good Briton will be in multiplayer. I think their roster might be somewhat weak, of course, excluding those British heavy chariots. And then on the other side we have sacred bands, a line of them, kind of an upgraded version of armored hoplites, a bit more expensive as well. Then we have slingers and some sacred band and round shield cavalry. So Carthage is relying on heavy cavalry and some spears as well. Then for the Numidia, Oh, and let's go through the generals as well. So Scipii is being commanded by Spider of Le Despacito. I don't know how to pronounce that. And then Greeks are commanded by the Trooper, once again promoted to a general. And then the Britons are commanded by Veneziano 33. Carthage is commanded by Necromancer from Enroth. Numidians are commanded by HMS Artibella. And the Julii are commanded by 33rd Caesar 123. Okay, so about Numidian troops, some archers, some desert infantry, Numidian legionaries, a few of them, some Numidian cavalry, and archers and long shield cavalry. Okay, interesting composition. So, at least I don't have experience with Britons or Numidians, at least yet, so it will be interesting to see how they will fare. And finally the Julii, Praetorian cavalry, quite a lot of them, and then Archer Auxilia, Triarii, legionary cohorts, and some more Triarii. Okay, so the Romans are not that heavily mirrored, but let the fight begin. Let's see what will happen. So, Carthage is already on the move. Let's see what will happen there. And if the Britons can react in time. So it seems Necromancer is doing some tricks here and rushing his opponent. The Scipii are a bit on the move. Britons are moving to the safety of the Greeks. Let's see if there will actually be an early battle without any skirmishing. So those chariots might be a bit vulnerable there. They are fighting against spears and they are being decimated quite early. The Scipii are pulling back, the Numidians are advancing and Greeks are rushing to help Britons. And the Carthaginian cavalry is just wreaking havoc, and it seems the British chariots are unable to stop them, so the Carthaginian cavalry now has free rein in this area. This cavalry charge and rush altogether was just brutal at the moment. So now the barbarian cavalry mercenaries are rushing in to help. Are they enough to drive the Sacred Band cavalries off, as the Britons' lines are being decimated? Well, some of these guys are rallying, but it seems the right flank of this army here has already collapsed. So only a few Briton units fighting, and the Sacred Band cavalries are still going quite strong here. Numidians have begun skirmishing with the Greeks, but the Numidians are actually being decimated by those vastly superior Grecian archers. So they are not standing a chance there. Of course, if the cavalry can rush them, then the situation may change, but the Britons, in any case, are being driven off mostly. Julii is moving into position, so Scipii and Greek cities are making a joint defensive formation here. And perhaps they need to do something to counter that Carthaginian army on their right flank. And Numidia has pulled its legionaries to this flank as well. Some of them are taking hits from Grecian archers. Let's see, and they actually, some of them are fighting against druids. And the Julii are advancing slowly and steadily as Romans do, at least in my imagination. So, this army here is in quite threatening position, and there seems to be some kind of pincer maneuver happening as the Julii cavalry is on that flank and this army is on this flank, and missiles are starting to fly to the armored hoplites a bit more unprotected flanks. So some of the Grecian archers are scrambling to hit these slingers. Let's see how they will fare, and it seems it's going to be legionaries versus sacred bands, Scipii, Africanus versus Carthage. Let's see how the battle will go. Sacred bands are winded. There is a bit of indecisiveness with the legionaries, and some of the armored hoplites are moving in to help out here as well, and now both of the flanks are being covered here. So it will be phalanx versus phalanx as well, supported by some legionaries. Pila are being thrown. The Carthaginians are winded, so that may affect the battle here. Since the Romans are winded as well, but the Greeks are fresh. And some of the Sacred Band cavalries are moving in to help here, but they are most likely being driven off by Praetorian cavalry. And there is Numidian cavalry actually in the rear here, planning to do some damage. Let's see how it will go. So, Carthaginians have engaged the joint front of Greeks and Scipii here. Some of the Numidian infantry is trying to pull through the gap in the infantry line here, but those archers are just murderous, those Grecian archers, and Numidians are being pulled off. Carthaginian Sacred Band cavalry is charging, but perhaps their numbers are a bit too low to engage those Praetorian cavalries. And it seems the Carthaginian flank or front here is collapsing or has collapsed already. Oh, and the Julii, their cavalry is attacking the Scipii flank here. They are routing the archers and pulling back from the legionaries. On this flank, slingers are still fighting, but it seems Carthage has been completely routed. And the Praetorian cavalries are taking some damage from missile fire, and the legionaries are standing strong against the charges there. And it seems, I didn't actually see, was it the Numidian general or was it the, I guess it was the Julii general that got slain there. So the kind of defensive formation here is holding strong, at least for now. And the Julii cavalry is seeking to make it to the rear, and I guess this here is the soft underbelly of these defending troops, and the Julii legionaries are moving in to engage the Scipii. And Numidia is still firing, they have some troops left, but it seems that the Greeks and the Scipii do have missile superiority at the moment, so the Julii missiles are lagging in behind at least a bit. Javelins or Pila are being thrown, but are these units enough to face the first cohorts? Some desert infantries are ready to help, and now the Julii cavalry is charging and hitting those, at least those archers. Let's see if this reserve cohort is enough to drive them off, or will this first cohort here break? Apparently these guys are still standing strong, and now the Scipii cavalry is moving in to join the fray, and the Julii cavalry is being routed. At the same time, the Julii general is charging against the legionaries. At the same time, the Numidians are advancing as well, but perhaps they are having some issues with morale, as they are being driven off as well. Then we have Numidian legionaries here. They have found nice target in those Grecian archers. Let's see if they can break at least some of those. I have to confess that the battle is progressing a bit differently than I expected from the initial collapse of this right flank here. So I was actually thinking that the side in here would be kind of losing heavily at this point, but that's not seem to be the case. So we still have quite exciting battle going on here. A bit of a cavalry battle. Triarii are actually fighting against infantry, but they are being charged by Scipii cavalry. Some of Grecian archers being adventurous there and being routed. And here the legionaries versus legionaries match is progressing, and some armored hoplites are joining the fray, and the Scipii cavalry is once again sandwiching the Julii cavalry here. So it seems the situation of at least the Julii cavalry is getting a bit dicey in this flank. On the right flank, Numidian cavalry is still doing something. Some archers are fighting, but here on the left flank the situation is getting more and more perilous for the... Perhaps we could call this side defenders, as they clearly have not moved to the enemy area. So the defenders are starting to push the legionary cohorts back a bit by bit. Some of them, or some of the Triarii, have rallied here, and now the Scipii cavalry made a charge and practically collapsed this front here altogether. So the Julii still has archer auxilias, quite powerful composition, especially if they can be protected, and I think the Grecian archers have suffered quite a few casualties, and their arrows are rather limited. So if the Julii and Numidia can keep the defenders busy somehow, especially their cavalry, they might have a chance of inflicting enough damage with the archers to actually turn the tide, but as you can see from the timer, the battle will be decided quite soon. So the archer auxilia seem to be hitting the Grecian archers, or perhaps those armored hoplites actually. And the Julii general is broken, and now some of these legionaries and armored hoplites are moving in to engage these archer auxiliaries, and they are starting to take missile fire, and they have absolutely no protection available here, so perhaps they will be decimated. It seems they are in skirmish mode, trying to get some distance to the Scipii cavalry, but even against tired cavalry, I think the archers don't have too much chances. Some troops are rallying, but the Greek armored hoplites are driving them off, and the battle seems to be done.
Our army is victorious! A tribute to Roman strength
So,
and honor!
kind of epic match full of twists and turns. I really expected the Carthaginians to steamroll kind of over the right flank and then being able to support the rest of the offending armies and then kind of wrap up this battle quite neatly, but the Carthaginians were repelled and the tide of the battle turned quite decisively. So, as you can see, the Scipii and the Greek cities were able to inflict quite a few casualties here, and here the Carthaginians, this is the result of the decimating the Britons there. And we can see about these Scipii units, which of them performed the best, and it seems to be the Praetorian cavalry, which clearly were the MVPs of, well, at least this faction. Not perhaps the whole match, but at least for this faction, and they performed really well overall. War Dogs, perhaps a bit of disappointment there. I don't know about who was actually commanding, what Spider thinks about that. And then these legionaries did quite well as well, did Archer Auxilias. So, really a great battle, and thank you for everyone who participated in these battles. I hope we will be able to make some multiplayer matches soon enough. Thank you very much for watching. If you like the content, please leave a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Feel free to post comments. Have a great rest of the day. QualityOldGames out.